President, members of the Senate, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, today I rise not merely to respond to the government's budget, but to speak on behalf of the citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, a nation that in many respects and regards feel neglected, a nation that feels unheard, a nation that feels disillusioned, and a people who feel, and I submit to the gentlemen and ladies across here, they feel as a people without a voice, a people scared and scarred and anxious about the future of their country. And not only the future of their country, but the lives of their children. And so on this occasion, and the honor of addressing this Senate, I must first express gratitude to a woman that is indeed a person of great empathy and kindness, and a leader for the future of Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessor. And so, given this opportunity, it caused me to reflect on what we are really here to do as members of the Senate and as members of Parliament. And the word politics and its derivative comes to mind. Where does this word come from? And so, its first origin is political, which means city and state. And if we look to the further derivations as time went on, it evolved into the Latin politicus, which pertained to civil administration and governance. But the most important aspect of the budget presentation and the most important aspect of politics is service to the people, service to the members and the citizens of the nation to whom which you must represent. And unfortunately,
Senator,
nine times over...
Senator, just do me a favor and push the mic away from you a bit. No, just put there a little further. Good, perfect, that should be fine. Because your voice is carrying quite nicely, so the mic will pick it up more. No, you're allowed to, but we're going to fix it now.
Noted, Honorable President. And so, forgive my boisterous nature. It is with passion that I come to you this morning. And it is passion that is indeed needed to take this country into the future. And you see, when you are sitting on your laurels for 9 years, it is difficult to come to this Senate with passion, because it's almost as though you're doing this for too long. But not to fear. You don't have to sit on your laurels too long. A time will come where that too shall pass. And so, colleagues, as we embark upon what a budget presentation is meant to do, it is not merely a matter of arithmetic. You know, I've heard persons in the other place, as well as here, speak about expenditure and revenue. And they play with the lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as if it were merely a balance sheet. And I even heard the Honorable Prime Minister, in his acting capacity, speak to the cycles and the booms and slums of an economy. But I want to suggest to him that only a mismanaged economy, an economy that has been managed for 9 years poorly, has that level of inconsistency. But with a well-managed, well-appropriated government, these problems will be a thing of the past. And so the budget, friends, is about governance and decision-making. It's about representing citizens' interests. It is about participation in public affairs. but it is also about the rights and responsibilities and the accountability of our government to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so, in my estimation of the budget, and in coming to this Honorable Senate, a lot of the times the government is of the view that the opposition and anyone opposed to their views is politicizing an issue. And they always have this way of saying, well, don't speak about X, Y, and Z, you're politicizing. But I want them to understand that it's not political when our young people are being murdered daily in our streets, when families are forced to bury their sons and daughters. It is not political to ask for accountability. It is not political for people to feel safe in their homes and for security and decent human rights to be observed. It is not political, friends, when floods invade your homes in all areas of the country. It is not political when we cannot have decent lives and economic prosperity without fear of extortion by criminal elements. It is not political, friends, when we want a clean and reliable water supply. It is not political, friends, when we want accountability and transparency when you're delivering a budget. It is not political. It is personal, because each and every one of us have an invested interest in the future of our country. And so it cannot be simply political. And so as I look at the theme of this year's budget, it had me thinking, after 9 years, what were some of the themes that have been presented by the Honorable Finance Minister in the past? Because a trajectory of 9 years, a record of 9 years, must demonstrate to the people of Trinidad and Tobago some level of progression, yes? Some level of sustainability, some level of forward thinking. And so, let's go to 2016. Restoring confidence and rebuilding trust. Let's do this together. 2017, shaping a brighter future, transforming a new economy. 2018, changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. 2020, strengthening the foundation, building resilience for innovation and growth.
46.1, I distinctly remember introducing the Appropriation Bill 2025. Not that.
All right. Okay, members, let me... No, again, no. Standing order has been raised. Senator, from what I get that you're doing, you're just calling out the titles of past budgets. Again, I understand the point that you're making. You don't need to call out every single one from 2015 to now. We get the point of what you're doing. You've done a couple already. So I would ask you to just continue along and make your contribution.
I'm guided, Mr. President. You see, a challenge that we have, it's called self-awareness. And when you know where you come from, you can know where you are going. And so that is why this is important. But I want you to understand, coming to terms with all of these many years of fantastical themes that we've had to deal with, the main theme in all of these are challenges. The government has been challenged for so many years, challenge upon challenge upon challenge. Well, I submit to them, if you're not up for the challenge, you can vacate. And so this budget, it's almost as though we're in the twilight zone. Deja vu, a government of deja vu. And I tell you today, if you look at the prospectus, if you look at the objectives of each budget, year on year, it seems that they have repeat offenders in the budget. Repeat offenders in the budget, because the same thing occurs over and over again. And I wonder if in the spin cycle of the preparation of the budget, if it would be worthwhile before the Honorable Minister of Finance comes to present, if he can please Put the budget in a sack of rice before you present to the people. Maybe that will fix the problem.
Standing order 46-1. We are supposed to be debating an act to provide for the service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September.
All right. Okay. No, members. No. I cannot hear the point of order being raised by the Minister of Finance, so therefore it becomes difficult to rule. Minister of Finance, your point of order.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We are supposed to be debating an act to provide for the service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September, 2025. Not all of that.
Senator Mark, and so the only person to respond to a point of order is myself. Shouting across the floor does nothing than allow the time to run on the member speaking. So you understand what the detriment is. Member, I understand what it is that you're doing, right? Yes, we're debating budget 2025. Yes, you're correlating it to budgets passed and the economy passed and so forth. So I'll allow you to continue in that respect. Continue.
I'm guided by your astuteness and wisdom.
Don't worry, that's why he's not acting Prime Minister anymore. He's been rejected.
You know, comrades, honorable members, it seems as though anytime something is said that irritates, that tickles, there seems to be a problem. But that's okay, because the truth sometimes hurts. And so we understand. We understand that the truth sometimes hurts. But I want to go into the meat of my presentation, and if the honorable members, of course, they will allow it, I shall continue to the benefit of the nation. So, a couple areas I want to speak about which are significantly pertinent to both the citizenry, but specifically to the younger generation, to the persons who now have to inherit what our leaders have presented for them. And so when I look at the economics of this bill, as well as past, it seems that it's a broken economic model. It's broken. Because when we look at the data year on year, it does not paint a picture of a grand future. It doesn't paint a picture of prosperity. You see, we have the bill which was pegged on 1.9% projected growth rate, and some of the highlights that we are featuring here are issues of inflation. There was a boast that inflation is down and that year on year we've seen a reduction. But I want to submit to my colleagues across there, inflation matters not when there's high unemployment. Inflation matters not when there's high underemployment. Inflation matters not when persons can't even afford to go to the grocery, to the parlor. And so, when we look at the macroeconomics, we must also consider the microeconomics in our approach. When we look at food inflation specifically, we see that there's an increase from 2.3% from 1.9% year on year. When we look at basic food prices and the basket of goods, over the years 2015 to 2024, we see that there's been an increase of almost 73% on a basket of goods. When we look at health inflation, it's upwards of 7.5%. When we look at communication inflation, we look at an increase of almost 8.5%. When we look at oil and gas reliance, as the Honorable Prime Minister would have mentioned, there's a 51.4% decrease in energy reserves year on year. And so this is a broken economic model, friends. This is a model that is not sustainable. This is a model that we cannot rely on. And so it is always appropriate to come here and say, yes, the opposition is singing songs of despair. But just as they would have mentioned, the fact is the fact. And over the past 9 years, our country has been moving down an economic path that is not sustainable. The honorable member, in her contribution, spoke to debt and debt to GDP and matters related to debt. And she mentioned that borrowing happened on the other side. I want to submit to her that debt is good if done in a responsible manner. If you incur debt, it must be with the responsibility to invest in areas that will drive the economy, that will accelerate the economy, that will bring growth and prosperity to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But what we can see is that a track record of indebtedness, and no pun intended, but debt under this PNM administration has led to debt in our nation and in the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. But let us look at the numbers as it relates to the GDP of our country. And we're speaking about real GDP. Let's look at the numbers as it relates to unemployment over the past 9 years. We have central government debt of plus 3.4%. We have external government debt of over 15.4% year on year. And so that is why we are in a crisis of debt accumulation over time. I remember a few years ago, not too long ago, there was talk of a surplus. In the midst of the ocean of debt, suddenly there was a surplus. And so this was something that we should have been proud of. But if on average, sir, you are in a deficit, you are managing the economy in deficit year on year on year, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? Where is the chance for prosperity? In my time in university, professors, economists have been speaking about diversification for year on year on year. And my good colleague, a Calypsonian senator, he mentioned in his contribution that we've been speaking about using other areas to monetize and develop our tourism sector. Much has been said about that. But there's been much ado about nothing under this PNM government. Much ado about nothing. Because there's been talk after talk after talk without implementation, without operationalization. And that cannot be a recipe for success.
Did you pass mathematics?
I did, sir. I did, a distinction.
I would think so.
Thank you, but I digress. The point being, when we look at 2019,
what seat you screening for?
our debt to GDP ratio was at 58.8%. When we look at June 2021, it skyrocketed to 65%. When we look at the data as it relates to our existing debt to GDP ratio, we are almost at 76%. How long will we borrow until our debtors come knocking at our doors? How long will we borrow and kick the can down the road? Friends, colleagues, comrades, as Trinidadians, as citizens, we have to be mindful of what is our diversification strategy, if any. When I look at the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago, do you know that we are ranked 105 out of 190 countries? Did you know that many organizations have suggested that our problems with earning foreign direct investment is directly related to the bureaucracy involved in the process of investing in our country? In fact, one of the big five accounting firms suggested, based on budget insights, that our main issues are 1, corruption, 2, foreign exchange controls, crime and security, low productivity in the national labor force, and government bureaucracy. You see, so there's only so much that we can do to sell our country if our systems are not incentivized for foreign direct investment. And so what can we say to these people? Come, join us, where we embrace inefficiencies, where we embrace operational chaos, where we embrace all of these issues. They will not come. And so whether you stay in Trinidad or you go to Miami or you travel wherever, it doesn't matter. You have to fix home first. You must fix home first. And that is a problem that we're having. And so, let's be fair. In 10 years, a lot can be done. And so I wanted to look at what similar economies in the last 10 years, given such a time, a boy can become almost a teenager in that time. Families grow in that time. What can be accomplished in the time? And so if you look at the United Arab Emirates, in 10 years, new revenue streams, tourism, logistics, financial services, successes. While initially oil dependent, the UAE diversified into tourism. Dubai became a global hub for financial services and logistics. The result, and I want you to understand the process: investment, time, result. Investment, time, result. You put in the work, you operationalize the work, and you expect a result. So the result was significant GDP growth due to the non-oil sectors now contributing to a whopping 70% to the economy. 70%. So you come here today with the stories of we are challenged by our oil and gas, our natural advantages and disadvantages. And we are challenged here. And if you look at how clean the floor is in these oil and gas competitors, you can eat a sandwich off the ground. There are no sandwiches left for the people of Trinidad and Tobago because you have mismanaged the economy. You have mismanaged the natural resources that we've had in this country. Look to Vietnam, where they've grown their GDP by upwards of 15% by investing in electronics, manufacturing, technology. Look to Chile, where their non-traditional exports are now looking at fruits, wine, salmon, renewable energy. Look to Costa Rica, when they've invested in technology, medical devices, ecotourism. Look to Ireland, our friends in Ireland, where they have contributed now to the tech sector, the pharmaceutical industry, the financial services industry. They have had major attractions, the likes of Google, of Apple, of Pfizer. All of these companies go to where there is an opportunity and an appetite for growth. And so if persons have not come to Trinidad and Tobago in 9 years, what does that suggest to you? This is not a place for investment. And so you have to create the environment, the ecosystem that is required for diversification. If you look at Ethiopia, they've had GDP growth in Africa in manufacturing, agriculture, and infrastructure. If you look at Bangladesh, they've had growth in textiles and apparel and pharmaceuticals. And so I could go on and on and on. If you came and you said, sir, after 1 year, not much progress can be made. The population has given you another year. They've given you another year. They've given you another year. They've given you 5 years. You went on to 6. You're at 7. You're at 8. You're at 9. And now you're coming to tell me about steadfast and resolute, about forging paths to prosperity. What have you been doing in all that time? What were you doing? You're now forging paths to prosperity? I mean, a blind man can see.
They was recusing themselves.
A blind man can see that not much is happening.
Nothing.
Not much is happening. If after 10 years as a businessman, I cannot present to you means of revenue generation, alternative sources, I tell you by the afternoon, the CEO would be fired. The CEO would be fired. I tell you, in another place, they would be exiled out of the country. But in Trinidad and Tobago, forging pathways to success. Steadfast and resolute. How long must the people of Trinidad be steadfast and resolute? I mean, you're asking for too much now. You're asking, but we don't have anything else to give. We have zero to give. Zero to give. There's nothing to give. And so, I am emptying my pockets so you can see how the common man on the ground feels.
Because they can't multiply. Yes.
Because it is empty.
Yes.
And I didn't want to have to speak to my colleagues on their contributions. But if you don't have bread and butter to feed your children, I wonder how you're going to get to the US and these other aristocratic countries to benefit and see how sweet Trinidad and Tobago is. Huh? If you cannot find 10 cents to rub together as a common man in Trinidad and Tobago, how are you to enjoy
London.
lamb and life in London
Denmark,
as the honorable members across the
Or
floor?
Samoa. Or Samoa. Yes.
You know, the audacity sometimes, it is incredible. But as I say, what eyes don't see, heart though, grieve. So you're not in a situation where you have to do that. And so that is what we challenge with in Trinidad and Tobago. How do we identify with the people that we are meant to serve? How do we treat with the man on the ground who has to work a taxi service to pay for his children to go to school? And then you want to suggest a $1,000 book grant. Sir, do you know the cost of books in this country for our children? And you want to give $1,000 for book grants? I mean, it is ridiculous. Think about the man who has to come from Sandy Grande to Port of Spain and then has to send his children down the road and has to take a taxi down the road every day. I tell you, I have walked the ground in Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you, know what one of the main issues facing single mothers in Trinidad and Tobago? They don't not want to send their children to school. They can't afford it. They cannot afford to send their own children to school because the cost is too much. And so they have to make a choice. Do I feed my son a meal today, or do I send him to school?
But he still let them fly London.
Friends, these things do not make logical sense. And if you have an illogical government, you have to get rid of them. And speaking about diversification, I want to speak to a particular issue. And it relates to innovation. Because you have to understand the theory and the academics behind your implementation and your policies and your systems. There must be policy. And innovation and diversification go hand in hand. Most scholars will tell you this. Do you know that we had in this country an innovation policy? Did you know we had a national innovation policy? We did. When the PNM government came into power, they scrapped it. They reintroduced it again in 2017 to 2020. And then they closed it again. You have no plan for economic diversification. You have no policy for economic diversification, but you want to say, well, the manufacturing sector is growing about 3%. How is that meant to provide a robust future for the people of Trinidad and Tobago? It is either you're incompetent or you're not aggressive enough because you don't see the warning signs. And friends, the warning signs, even if you are a member of the opposition or you are a member of the current government, I know deep down in your hearts, each one of you know that we're in trouble. That is why the Honorable Prime Minister in acting came here and told us a sad story. I never seen the gentleman so sad in my life. The man come here looking sad and downtrodden. I don't know what's happening, but I want to suggest to the national population that don't worry if they're sad now. We will make things better. We have plans for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to bring prosperity and happiness, not sadness. So, friends, linking innovation and diversification is so important. In fact, the UNDP said that innovation is crucial to ensuring that economic diversification is sustainable in the long term. In fact, if we go to other noteworthy sources, the OECD said for economies to successfully diversify, there must be an emphasis on technology and innovation and as key drivers in growth. The World Economic Forum has suggested that economic diversification hinges on the development of innovative policies that foster new sectors and improve competitiveness. Friends, you want to speak about facts? The fact is that scholars, academics, persons engaged in the science of economics, the social science of economics, have been speaking about diversification, but we have not taken the steps to truly diversify our economy. And so, yes, we are bombarded by these exogenous factors, these national and international issues of wars and rumors of wars, but that cannot be an excuse for how you manage an economy moving forward. Because if that is the issue, and if that is the excuse, it's best you pack up. That's what you're telling the nation. Things are bad, there's ups and downs, we don't know how to manage it, and so let us pack up and go. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous to think that this is where we are at in 2024. And so, friends, economic diversification. In fact, in 2021, when there was the Economic Development Advisory Board, which was eventually scrapped, many economists locally called for a reintroduction of this innovation policy. And so, had this been done in the time that the existing government has been apart, I'm sure much more progress would have been secured by our nation and the citizens of our nation. And so, steadfast and resolute, forging paths to prosperity, I don't know. I don't know if I can look at the inflation rate. I don't know if I can look at the debt to GDP ratio. I don't know if I can look at unemployment levels. I don't know if I can look at infrastructural decay. I don't know if I can look at any of these indicators of what a healthy economic system looks like and suggest to you, in good conscience, that we are forging paths, that we are moving steadfast, and that we are heading in the right direction. I cannot. Now, friends, I want to speak a bit about a topic that many of my colleagues have spoken about already, and that is the issue of crime. And the reason that we must touch on crime is because crime affects even the economics of a country. You see, there's a direct relationship between economic prosperity and the levels of crime. There's a direct correlation that when economies are doing well, certain derivations of crime are reduced. And so the economics suggests, because of the crime levels that we've been experiencing, and it's no stranger to any one of us, I have spoken to individuals in my private time where persons are now scared to go and make a grocery run. You go to a grocery, you come out your car, you get hold up, you lose your car, potentially you can lose your life. And these are areas that even members on the other side, in their quiet time, they mightn't say it here, but you are also scared of the crime situation in this country. You are also afraid of the crime situation in this country. And so if there's a problem where we are now at 500 plus murders, and there is no real call for action, what are we saying to the population of Trinidad and Tobago? They are forgotten, they are displaced, they're terrified. That is not symptoms of a developing nation. These are not symptoms of a country on the rise and forging its path. These are symptoms of calamity, and they must be addressed. And so when you contemplate in your private time, and you take off your political hat, I want you to consider that one day you too might be a victim of this spiraling crime situation. And then who would be to blame? Will it be the opposition, once again, to feel the brunt? 9 years in opposition, and you're still blaming us? 9 years? So how long? We'll take another 5? You know? So crime is an issue, a national issue.
Senator, you have 4 more minutes.
It's a national issue. And when we look at the percentages as it relates to the distribution of this expenditure and appropriation bill, we're always seeing that the numbers, national security is at 18% of potential expenditure, education at 22%, healthcare at 22%, and then coming down the line, there are changes, the numbers get smaller. But the point is that you have had a situation where a significant portion and contribution of your expected expenditure has been on 3 critical areas. Has been on security, it has been on education, and it has been on healthcare. And it's sad to see that in those 3 areas, these are where the country is failing the most. We are failing the most in these critical areas. Now, who is responsible? Who is responsible for this? As I said, governance and politics are for the people. And if you are enshrined with the responsibility to deliver for the persons that you suggest that you care about, why is the result so far from the expectation year after year? And it saddens me that I only have about 5 minutes again. It really does. I know members on the other side enjoyed so much my contribution so far. And I want to tell them, have no fear. You'll be hearing from me quite soon. And you'll be hearing from all members on this side quite soon. And I leave you with this quote. And I think it's quite fitting. And in your quiet time again, reflect on this, friends. Exodus 3 and verse 9. When you go home, look it up in your Bible. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt. You could switch that for Trinidad. And I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmakers. I invite you to consider who the taskmakers are in this situation. For I know their sorrows, and there are a lot of sorrows, friends. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians. My good friends across the road. And so, friends, the verse says, to bring them up out of the land unto good land, and a large unto a land flowing of milk and honey. And that is what we in the opposition will bring to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Not doom and gloom. Milk and honey. And I know you must know about things like honey. That's something that you'd have in your house, right? Yeah, we on this side, we're using granular sugar, but you could use honey. But the point is, a time will come when people will have to make a decision. And that decision will determine the future of Trinidad and Tobago. And I am confident that the United National Congress, under the leadership of Kamala Persad Bissessar, is the answer to this call. Thank you.